Alrighty then. Well, it is now 6:34, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. I hope you guys are having a great Friday. We got a really good event for you today. My name is Eric Rosa. I am the founder of TSCUF. I am also the team lead of NSBE Code. And with us, we also have a special guest from Google today. His name is Daniel. If you would like to introduce himself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, everyone. My name is Daniel Fiorello, and as I should have started with, howdy from Austin, Texas, everyone. I probably wouldn't be able to have joined this event if it wasn't for this virtual platform we are in. So at least there's something to be thankful for when it comes to this virtual platform, getting to connect with all of y'all amazing students and getting to, plug some future events, which we are going to be hosting, which we think you may find interesting. Before I jump into some future events, a little bit more about myself. I am Daniel Fiorello, the community manager here for developer student clubs in the US. It's my job to work with students like Eric and help him, host events like this to teach students, about getting started with GitHub, or perhaps even getting connected with additional Google technologies such as Google Cloud Platform, Firebase, machine learning, TensorFlow. We got a ton of different things we could potentially teach you. If there's a particular topic you're interested in learning, let us know, right? Share it with Eric, and he'll partner with me, and we'll do our best to partner together and bring an amazing event to each and every one of y'all. The other thing I'd like to do here is just briefly, go through my background, because one of the things I'd like to do is join y'all's events in the future and try to act as a mentor if I could. So in my short career, I've had quite a bit of experience thus far. Luckily, I have worked with Google for the majority of my corporate career. Started off with Cisco, quickly found out that I actually did not like what I went to university for, which was management information systems. Quickly flipped my career on its head, started investing heavily in myself through tech programs, learning these new Google technologies that you're actually getting the opportunity to learn right now, which helped give me the opportunity to get connected with Google Fiber when it launched in Austin. I started off as a business sales rep. From there, I quickly grew into an account coordinator and eventually led a small team of 4, business counterparts. And we had a go-to-market strategy specifically for Austin, and it was a lot of fun. The reason I mention this is, with that experience, it's helped me, gain access to a ton of additional resources, right? Which y'all may find interesting. I've had the opportunity to review resumes, do interviews, right? Make connections with sponsors, build projects from scratch. So if there's something y'all would maybe interested to hearing about from my previous experience, would love to come in and share that with y'all. All you have to do is ask. From there, I was able to switch over to the Developer Student Club, and that's where I am now. My favorite part about this community is getting to connect with students like Eric and yourself. A little differently this year in a virtual capacity, but think of me as a friend and a mentor. So number one, what I would like y'all all to do at the end of this meeting is find me on LinkedIn and send me a message and a request. I would love to connect with you, and I would love to endorse some of the new skills that you are actually going to receive through future DSC events. But to kind of finish it off, I did promise some future events which are upcoming. So let me drop some dates in the chat for y'all. And I would also recommend going to your University of Florida Developer Student Club page to RSVP for these events in the near future, as there will be event pages built out. So we have a Flutter series, which is ongoing. We have our next part. Thank you so much, Eric. We have the second part of our Flutter series taking flight next week. On our channel, Think Outside the Valley, you can actually review all of the previous Flutter series. Let me go ahead and get that link for y'all now. The upcoming Flutter event is actually going to be on the 3rd. or I'm sorry, the 4th, right? Not on the election day, wrong day there. Yes, definitely check out the channel, like and subscribe. You can actually review the previous Flutter videos and get started with an amazing application. Flutter's really cool. It's a great way to take an app from 0 to 100. And we have an amazing Discord community where you can actually ask questions directly with the mentors. There's another event as well called Cloud Hero. This is going to be an opportunity for students who may have not had the most experience with the Google Cloud Platform to, number one, get trained on it, as well as been given an opportunity to learn some new skills and take away an amazing badge to showcase their newfound abilities. We actually are going to be hosting 3 different events for this Cloud Hero. The first is a prep event, and that's going to be on the 4th at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm actually going to drop the link in for that chat, or the link in for that YouTube video in the chat right now. Highly recommend setting a reminder for all of y'all. This is going to be the prep event, which teaches you kind of everything about Quick Labs as well as SQL. If you have not, been introduced to SQL in the past or SQL, there's going to be tons of that covered in the Cloud Hero itself. From there, there's actually going to be the Cloud Hero game where we'll run through that on next weekend, and that's going to be the 7th. This is going to be a little bit of a longer event. It's going to be about an hour and a half, 2 hours. But the reason for that is we're going to walk you through the labs so you can follow along and ask questions live from mentors like your DSC lead here, Eric. So I know I threw a ton at you. Please definitely go to your DSC website next week. We'll have some pages out there for you to RSVP and take advantage of these events, as well as check out the links in the chat window to your right. There's 3 different YouTube links. Please take a moment and set a reminder. They are fantastic events that I think each and every one of you would enjoy. And with that, Eric, the floor is now yours. Thank you so much for allowing me to come in and take over for a couple minutes. But now back to your regularly broadcasted event.
Sorry. Awesome. Thank you so much for that. That was a lot of great information. All that information is going to be posted into our Slack and as well as our DSC chapter page as well. Be on the lookout for the next week or so once we get those RSVP pages up. A lot of great content coming your way, and we're so happy that we can provide that content for you. Thank you so much for coming, Danny. I really appreciate it, and it was really great hearing from you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And y'all have a lot of fun, getting started with Git and GitHub, right? This very important tool. So please pay attention. Eric's going to teach you some awesome skills. We'll see y'all next time.
Awesome. Thank you. Alrighty then, just 1 second. Alrighty, everyone. So now we're just going to get started. Just a little recap again. My name is Eric Rosa. I am the DSC UF lead. I'm also the founder and president of the club. Additionally, I'm also the NSBE Code team lead. That is a sub-organization of the National Society of Black Engineers. And we're basically putting this together as a community, really, to give you guys this event. GitHub is a really important tool for all software engineers and everyone who works in the tech industry. So without further ado, let's learn some more about GitHub. Okay, so our agenda for today involves first a quick introduction of what Git is. We're going to learn what Git is and what GitHub is. Then we'll dive a little bit deeper into the core concepts of Git and GitHub. Then we're going to teach you how to get started with GitHub. We're going to help you set up your account and get access to some resources that GitHub provides for us because we are students. In addition to this, we will follow this with a quick demo that will give you basically a hands-on demonstration of what using GitHub looks like in a real-world experience. And then at the end, we will have some resources and we'll go over a little bit about merge conflicts. Alrighty, so what is Git? Git and GitHub are a perfect pair, however, they're not the same. Git is a version control system that allows people to manage the changes to their documents, programs, and software. So essentially what Git is. It is a version control system that is free and used throughout the industry. It is something that is an essential skill to have for all software developers, mainly because this is used in literally every single company that there is as far as the tech industry is concerned. And with this, there is a lot that goes with Git, as it's a pretty dense resource, as there are lots of commands. It's a command line interface that has a lot of hidden features that you really wouldn't think of if you don't use it that often. So with this, we want to introduce you into Git as a way to manage the history of all your documents. It's kind of like Google Drive or Google Docs, but for coding. Okay, now Git versus GitHub. GitHub is to Git what Facebook is to your face. This is a nice little saying that I found on the internet that I thought it was a really good comparison for the two. Facebook essentially is a hub of lots of people's faces, And with that, GitHub is a hub of lots of people's repositories. So essentially, Facebook is something that you use to show off your face and your personality and your profile and all information like that. GitHub is used in a similar way, where you use it to show off your code. It stores your code, and you can either make it private or public so that anyone can see it, and you can host all of your repositories there. And a good thing to mention about GitHub is that it is entirely cloud-based. Git, on the other hand, is a local version control system where you're actually controlling your history on your local machine. You can then post your repository to GitHub so that it is also maintained in the cloud as well. And this is a practice that every software development company uses, just because it's always good to back up your stuff and always have a resource to go back to if anything goes wrong. Alrighty, so now we're going to go over some core concepts and vocabulary that you will need throughout the rest of this workshop. A couple quick things that we're going to go over. A directory is another word for a folder. A repository is any location where files are stored. These can be any kinds of files. In addition to this, we also have the terminal, which in Windows, it's also called the command line or the command prompt. We're going to get a little bit experience with that today as well. We have the CLI, which is the command line interface, which is essentially just your command prompt. And then we also have IDEs, which are integrated development environments, which are your basic Eclipse, VS Code, IntelliJ, Sublime, etc. Next, we're going to introduce the GitHub workflow. The GitHub workflow consists of three main stages. We have the working directory, the staging area, and the repository. The working directory is where the files are created and edits are managed. So in the working directory, this is where you'll just do all of your day-to-day coding and any task really of editing the file and code itself. Next, we have the staging area. The staging area occurs when you've reached a good spot in your code and you would like to save it for future use. The staging area consists of preparing your saved code to be saved on the local or cloud-based repository. So with that, the staging area is where we essentially pack up your saved code from the working directory, and then the final stage is actually sending it to the repository. And all of these stages are very interchangeable. It's more of a cycle, especially when you're working on a project in a long-term environment. The repository is something that you will not only push data to, but you'll also pull data as well. So you'll be collecting actual information from the cloud, as well as sending it to the cloud to store it as well. Now, how does Git work? Git works in a 5-stage process. We have staging and committing, which is the process of packaging data to be sent to the repository. We have branches, which is the process of creating separate different code bases so that multiple people can work on the same code at the same time. By creating separate branches, someone working on a specific feature wouldn't affect another person working on another feature if something were to go wrong. So basically, branches allow multiple people to work on the same project without the fear of interfering and creating conflicts in between. As a result of these multiple branches that we can have, we have merging. Merging is the process of compiling several different branches together, and we'll go more into that in the future. And then another great part is reverting. Reverting is a optional stage that you don't really want to use much. Because GitHub gives you a file history, you can look at your previous saves that you have implemented, your previous commits, and with that, you can always revert back to a prior save if something were to go wrong. And this is something that's really helpful. I know a lot of times when I get into any kind of coding, sometimes I get really into the zone and then I change a lot of things and then I finally test it and then there's something wrong. This is where reverting really comes into handy. When you may not remember what you changed to cause it to fail, you can always revert to that previously saved version where you know it's working. And then lastly, we have pushing and pulling. Pushing and pulling is essentially you push data when you send it to the cloud repository on GitHub, and you're pulling data when you're trying to get the most recent version that is on the cloud GitHub repository. And for the next couple of presentations, we just want to give a little special shout out to DSC Mount Allison University for providing the graphics for the upcoming slides. Okay, so staging and committing. First of all, we start with just a file. Right now, we've just made our initial file. We are going to set up with our project, and then we continue to work on it, and then we start to make edits. After we make our edits and we get to a place where we feel that we're very comfortable with and it's a good product and we want to save that progress, we go ahead and save it. With that, we continue this process, and then after that, we follow it with a commit. With the commits, what happens is that you add your changes to the new branch, to the new data, and then you commit it, which is saving it to your repository. So staging the data is the actual just editing and saving it and then adding it to the local repository. Committing your data is essentially creating a new save. And with these commits, you can include important information that gives a little bit of insight as to what was changed with this new save. So over time, you're just going to continue working on your project to where you have more new saves, and you're completing that process over and over again. What these saves are essentially just commits. So each part along the way, you are making another commit where you have basically set aside your code and saved it to a different level each time. And with these commits, you can always go back to them or refer back to them at any time, or even revert back to them. And that's one of the best things about GitHub. It really gives you the opportunity to save and move forward at the same time. Next, we have branches. Now with this system, we have several different commits, but this is an example of us working by ourselves. If you're working on your own repository, you're the only one who's going to be editing it, so all the commits are going to be yours, and most likely you're doing everything on your own. When we have multiple people involved, we introduce the concept of branches. So essentially, every GitHub repository, every Git and GitHub repository includes the main branch. The main branch is your production level finished product set of code. You want your main branch to be the most recent working version of your code. And in the process of this, how would you make changes or try to implement new features that might be a little bit precarious? You would create a new branch so that if something were to go wrong with the main code, you wouldn't affect it in the process. So that's what we're doing right here. This process includes branching away from the main level so that you can make changes without affecting the main code. And then through this process, you just continue working on your actual code itself. However, when you're working with different people, a lot of different moving parts are happening at the same time. So for that reason, there is the possibility of you working on your separate branch that was pulled from a later or an earlier version of your code. And then you have other people who were working on a different part of the code and they affected the main branch already. With that, you would find that your actual code that you have on your local machine on that new branch is not in sync with the main branch as it's behind, as seen right here. So with that, sorry about that. With that, just one moment. Alrighty, sorry about the interruption. Okay, so with this new branch, you are now behind from the main code. So this is when we implement merging. Merging is when you combine different branches into the same branch. So in this case, we were working on our own branch here, and we made our developments, but we started at an earlier date than the rest of the main code. So for this reason, when we merge the branches together, we will be compiling the changes that we made on our individual branch here with the new code that was changed already on the main branch. So merging is a really important concept that we'll go into a little bit more detail in the future. However, merging is just something that you really have to get a lot of practice on, because it's something that is not the same every time, as sometimes there's conflicts that are caused by multiple changes on the same line. In addition to this, we also have the concept of reverting. So for example, we have our code here, and then we see that we want to go back to this particular version of the code instead of the code that's been affected with our new branch changes. So for that, we revert back, and then we change our main to being that previous version of the code. Now with this, we have closed that gap, and then now we have gone back to the main version that was restored from before. So essentially, instead of having both the previous code as well as the new branch intact, we just simply reverted back to this stage where the new branch was not implemented. And then lastly, we have the concepts of pushing and pulling. Pulling is when you get data from the cloud-based GitHub repository and then bring it to your local machine. So in this case, our cloud repository is a little bit more ahead than our local repository. So we would want to pull the information so that we can get that information on our local repository and work on it. And the concept of pulling is something that's really important if you're working on a very dense project with a lot of people. I would definitely say that you want to make it a good practice to make as many pulls as possible when you're working with different people, just because you can be writing code for a version that is different from what you're working on right now, and you wouldn't want to do more work for yourself there. And then on the opposite side, we also have pushing, which would be sending data from the local repository to the cloud-based repository. And this is something that you also want to take special account into, as a lot of things happen in life. I know a lot of us just like to have our stuff just saved in our computer in just one file, but unfortunately things happen. Your computer could break, you can have some kind of malfunction, you can accidentally delete something, and then you lost those files forever. With GitHub, if you consistently push your materials to your repository, you won't have this issue because you'll have this saved on the cloud as well. And we have the concept of merging, which is essentially just bringing the newer branch up to date with the older branch, which would be the main in this situation. Alrighty then. So right now we're going to go on a quick demo to introduce you guys how it looks like in the actual real world. But before we start our demo, we're just going to go through the process of just getting started with your account. First of all, you just want to go on to github.com and then go ahead and create your account. This is a very straightforward process, so we're not going to go over that in too much detail. You just want to make sure you sign up with your UFL email, because it will give you access to special materials. And those special materials would be the GitHub Student Pack. And the GitHub Student Developer Pack is something that's very, very, very useful. It includes over 50 different types of subscriptions, content, tutorials, maybe even domain names as well. There's just a lot of content that comes with this GitHub Student Developer Pack. And the best part about it is that it's free, that we're students. So with that, you can get anything from free domain names, machine learning, data science tutorials, interview prep courses. That's something that's very important to get us head start on now. Additionally, it also gives you access to certain subscriptions. For example, you get a Unity subscription as well as a Canva subscription. And in addition to this, you also have access to a variety of APIs as well. So definitely visit this link once you create your account so that you can redeem your student pack, and definitely start taking advantage of that stuff now, because at the end of the day, who doesn't love free stuff? And GitHub has so graciously provided a lot of content for us, and we should really take advantage of it. After you've created your account, we're going to start with the downloading of the actual Git platform itself. The Git platform download can be found right here on this link right here. It'll bring you to this website where you will be able to download it for your appropriate operating system. Side note for Mac users, if you already have Xcode installed, Git is already comes with it, so you don't have to worry about that. And for anyone who doesn't have this downloaded already, you can always just download it at this link. And then I recommend watching this Git installation guide. It's a very quick 7-minute video where they go through the actual download and the configuration and the setup depending on your particular platform. In addition to this, we also have GitHub Desktop. GitHub Desktop provides a different user experience that is a lot more user-friendly in my opinion. It's a great looking app that allows you to do everything you can on the command line, but with a very pleasing GUI. And with that, I would definitely put this little recommendation of not relying too much on GitHub Desktop. As software developers, we're going to be using the terminal a lot, so it's best to get used to using Git and GitHub with the terminal and getting used to those commands, since you're going to be there a lot anyway. And overall, it's just best to be really comfortable with the terminal, as that's the most basic form of interaction with the computer. Alrighty, so now we're going to go ahead and get started with our actual demo of the GitHub experience. So first of all, we're going to start with a little scenario. So I am a web developer, and my boss wants me to create a simple web page that will be worked on by many people. To complete this task, we're going to use GitHub. So in the beginning stages of this process, the first thing we want to do is create the actual file and program that we actually want to create for this project that our boss gave us. With that, we have this cool little simple index.html page that just says my first HTML page and our Get Started work. So with that, we feel that we've gotten to a good stage with the actual product itself. And now we want to bring that experience to our boss by allowing them to see it on their machine as well through GitHub. So to get started with this, we're going to go ahead and go to our command prompt or the terminal on a Linux or Mac PC. And then we're going to first locate this file itself. So The index.html file is located in the desktop repository on my computer, and we also have it in the workshop file as well. We're just gonna make sure, yes, you can see right here that we have it in the index.html is in the workshop folder. And with that, we're going to create a GitHub repository, or a Git repository rather. So with that, we use the command git init. With this command, it initializes an empty Git repository that allows us to maintain a history as well as a few docket files that will keep track of our branches, our commits, and any changes that are made throughout the actual process of building this website. So with that, we have another command, git status. Git status is a very good command that basically gives you a little overview of your most recent commits. As of right now, we have no commits yet, as this is just a new file and a new empty repository. But you can see here it says untracked files. These are files that haven't been added, but they exist within our repository. So with that, we're going to add this Git file to our repository. So we do that with the command git add, and then we're going to put the file name itself. So index.html. And with that, it's not going to give you any kind of message unless there's an error. So it should just return the same thing and then move on to the next line in the command line. And with this git add command, you can also add all the contents in a folder by using git add, sorry about that, git add star. This adds all the contents that are in the current directory or folder, in this case, the workshop folder right now. That's a really good handy tool when you're using when you're editing a lot of different files. So now that we've added our file to the actual repository on our machine, we now have to commit this file so that we can see the changes that were made. So with that, we use git commit, and then we're going to use this M flag. That's this -M is a flag that basically lets us input a message that will be attached to this commit. So since this is our first commit, we're just going to put started working on site. And we do the commit, and then now you see that one file has changed, and then there have been some insertions. Whenever you do a git commit, you want to see all the changes and all the files. You want to make sure that that is the correct number. We only have one file, so that is a correct number. So with that, we're going to run our git status again. And now you can see that we no longer have that untracked file, and that commit has been taken over. In addition to this, we also have the git log command. And this is a really good command because it gives you all your previous commits. And right here, we can see that we did our commit at 7:06 p.m. today, and it says started working on the site. So now we have a saved position of our index.html file. And with that, we can continue to process that into GitHub itself. So now with that, now that we have initialized our repository on our local machine, we're going to go ahead and get into GitHub. Okay, so now once you're on GitHub, you'll see a list of your current repositories as well as the new button where you can create a new repository on the GitHub website itself. As of right now, what we have on our local machines is just a local repository, a Git repository. So now we're going to be hosting our local repository on GitHub. So we go to new, and then we'll give a name for our repository. We'll call it web app. Give it a little description. Boss wants a site. And then we also add if it's public or private. Private accounts, or private repositories rather, are very useful when you're working on any kind of school project or a project that you don't want other people to see. I really recommend, if you're going to save your school projects on anywhere, make sure it's a private repository, just because in the future, if someone looks up a project that you've done in the past and they're taking a class that you've taken before, they can use your code, and then you would also get flagged for plagiarism on that, I believe. So definitely keep any schoolwork or any top secret projects that you're working on in a private repository. So with that, we named our repository, we gave it a little description. Now we're just going to go ahead and get that created. So we'll give it a second. Awesome. So now we have our repository named web app, and now we see that there's no code in our repository right now. It's empty. So for that, they give us a couple of options to populate our repository with some code. So our first option is to create a new repository on the command line. If you look through these codes, through these lines, you will see that this is exactly what we've done already. We initialized our repository, we added our files, and then we made our commit to the actual Git repository itself. We also have the option to push from an existing repository from the command line. This essentially just takes off the beginning process of creating a new repository and then starts from there. So given that we already have a Git repository already on our local machine, we're just going to go ahead and use these lines to get that set up on our GitHub profile. So with that, we're just going to copy and paste these lines and place them exactly as detailed. Sorry about that, having a little bit of mouse trouble. Okay, awesome. So we do that command. What that command does, git remote add origin. This is adding our local repository to our web app repository that we have on our GitHub profile. Then we have git branch main. This is essentially putting us back onto the main branch on this new repository. And then next, we have git push origin main. What this does is pushing our data from our local repository to this cloud repository. So now we see that this has been done with no errors and we have been returned. So now if we refresh our page here, we now have our code. So if you go to index.html, you can see all of our work that was done here. And then you also see our commit message that says started working on the site. So this is a really good place that we're at right now, just because we can really look at all the changes that have been made to our documents as far as commits. So if we make several more commits, then we can see all those changes here, and then we can always go and dive into those commits and see what exactly changed from version to version. In addition to this, we also have another great feature of GitHub, especially when you're working on a team, is the issues section right here. The issues section is really great when you're working on a project that may have either a couple people working on it, or maybe you just want to use it yourself to keep track of any bugs or anything that needs to be fixed. This issue section is very useful for that process. So let's say we implemented our code and then we're going to show it to one of our coworkers to see if they think that it is a efficient solution for what we have to do. So they come back, they see the code, and they give us, hey, there's something wrong with it. It's missing a header. Missing a header that says hello world. And then with this, they can submit this new issue, and then you can see all the issues that are pertaining to this version of your code. So with that, we see that it's a current open issue and it's something that needs to be fixed. So we're going to go ahead and get that done. We're going to start that process. So we're going to go back into VS Code. Right here, and we're going to add the H1 that they wanted. So we're just going to say hello world. We're going to save it. Okay. So now that we've saved it, we could implement the same process that we just did before with the command line, where we used git add index and then git commit. We could do that so that we can save our file. That works as well, but I'm actually going to show you an alternative way using GitHub Desktop. So with that, we open GitHub Desktop. And upon seeing it, you're going to be like, wow, this is a really good looking experience here. Sorry about that. So we'll go back. We're going to review our repository list, and we see we already have web app here. And we see, just one moment while it refreshes. Yes, so now we see that we have a change right here on our repository. We see we have now implemented this new line, hello world, and it says in the changes index.html. So that's great to see. And then we also see on this end right here, we can make our commit right here. So as of right now, we can either make this commit right now through the actual command line, or we can do it through the GitHub process as well. So in order to do this, we just do a little message, update index.html, we commit to main, and now we go back to our history, and then you see this is the new commit that we just made, update index.html. This little arrow right here indicates that the actual commit hasn't been pushed to the actual cloud repository right now. So in order to do that, we'll just click push origin right here, push origin. We'll let it do its thing. Awesome, so that has been fetched. We see the arrow is now gone. So that indicates that the commit and the push went through. So if we just refresh right here, then go back to our code, we see our last commit 2 minutes ago, update index.html. And then if we check it out, we see, boom, hello world right there. So now we have an updated version of our code that we can look at. And then at the same time, we can go through our commits and then start looking at the previous versions of the code. And then we can always revert and go back to it at any time. Another important concept that we have to address is branches. So for example, let's say that our boss wants us to start working on a table that would have a list of classes for the undergrad students at UF. To implement this feature, we might have to change some code that was already implemented previously. So for that reason, we're going to want to create a new branch so that the code that we're making right now, the changes that we make, will not affect the main code without any problems, essentially. So to do that, we're going to create a new branch so that we can work on this code individually. So first of all, we're just going to go ahead and make that change. We're just going to add another thing here that says table, and then give it one entry, COP 4020. There you go. It's very simple. Not exactly the whole thing they asked for, but that's what we have here. Next, we're going to go ahead and make a new branch. So in order to do that, we're going to use the code git branch. Oops, sorry about that. Git branch. And then as of right now, you can see that we are in the main branch. So that we can create a new branch, we're going to use the command git checkout -b. The -b is what tells the computer that you are trying to make a new branch with this name. So we're going to name it table added. And git checkout on its own is a command that allows you to switch branches. But once you add the -b flag and add a name, that's when you can create a new branch here. And as well as creating a new branch, it switches you to that branch. So with that, we created a new branch and then we switched to it, name table added. So if we go to git branch again, we can see that we're on table added and we have 2 branches currently. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and look at our change that we made already. We can add another thing right here too, just to populate it a little bit more. We'll call it 3101, short. Awesome. And then now that we have that done, we're just going to go ahead and get this to our branch. So with that, we can either git add index.html, and then we can commit this new change. The change will be added table of classes. We see that one file was changed, and then now we're going to git push origin main. Okay, we see everything up to date. That should work. Oh, sorry. Git push. I was actually seeing that was a actual bad error because nothing was changed, even though we just changed some content in the actual slides themselves. So with that, you have to really look at your command and see what was wrong. Here, we would say that our main was wrong. We want to actually push this to our new branch. So it'd be git push origin table added, which is the name of our new branch. I see. Okay. Yes. So this is one of those great things about GitHub. There's a lot of practice that comes with it, and a lot of things can go wrong at different times. But that's okay. We make mistakes, and we go through them. So in this case, this is a really good example to show, just because we have now moved away from being in sync with the main branch. So if we go back to our GitHub right now and visualize what we have right now, we see that it still says, hello world. This is the most recent commit 6 minutes ago, and then something has gone off there. In addition to this, if we go back to web app, we also see that we only have one branch as well. So with that, we just want to go back to what we were doing before and then enter the information one more time, but do it a little differently, paying attention a little bit more. So with that, if we check our branch again, we just want to make sure we're in the right branch, git branch table added. Then we want to, sorry about that. And with that, we want to git add index.html. We see that it's added. M. Working tree clean. Okay, so we have that settled there. And now all we have to do is git push added. Oh, I see. Okay, so throughout this process, it seems something went wrong with my actual repository itself. I'm using a new repository, so there was a little error when it comes to that. But essentially the way that works is that you check out that branch and then you add it to your new branch as well, and then you'll have them to combine. So with that, we're just going to go back to our actual GitHub on here, and we see our most recent issues. With the issues, we can go over here, check them out, and have those resolved or closed now that we have completed that missing header. Now that we missed that and we go back to our code, everything's good now. So we are at a good spot with their code, and we want to show it to our actual boss themselves. Now, right now, we already have this code on our actual repository itself. So we're not going to go ahead and copy that again. But in order to simulate what the experience would be like for our boss, looking at our code on GitHub and then copying it to the machine, we're going to get another repository and do the same thing. So with that, we have this GitHub of a list of games on GitHub right here. And we have the ability, since it's a public repository, like our other repository, we can clone it. So what we're going to do is we're just going to copy that. We're going to go back in our directory and find a place that we want it to be. And then we use the code git clone. And then you just paste in that code right there from the clone prompt. And then it will now give you those files and download it into that actual directory. So now if we take a look into this folder, we see we have the games folder, and now the actual, our boss in this sense, can take a look at our code from GitHub and just download the most recent version that's available to them. So with that, we're just going to go over one more thing. We're going to create that whole process again, but from the actual command line itself without using the actual website. It's a little bit different to see how you do it without getting the actual commands from the website itself. So we're just going to go ahead and do that again. Get back into our working directory with our workshop. And then we'll just go back to this file, make it the way it was. And then now, when we go to git status, we see that the modified index.html has been changed. So we have to actually add those changes, index.html. And then we want to git commit stored version. See, we have the files changed. And then now all we have to do is git push. Now we have everything up to date because we just put it back into the normal state. And now it registers with this actual state that we have right here. So if we refresh, it's not going to show that change right now because it is up to date. Now, in addition to this, you can also make a branch from here. You can just type in a new branch. So we'll just go branch new, and then click there. And then it will create a new branch that is a copy of what you have in main now. So now that you have this branch right here, you will just simply make your changes on this branch, and then you will continue the process of making the changes on this branch and not affecting the changes on the main branch as well. So with that, we got this new branch. We'll go over into git branch again, and you'll notice that it doesn't show up here because that's a new branch on our GitHub repository. At the end of the day, you have to remember that there is a Git repository on your local computer and a Git repository on GitHub as well. So any changes that you make to the actual repository on the cloud will have to be imported into your new repository on your computer so that those changes are maintained. So with that, we're just going to simulate putting that stuff in the new branch there. So we're just going to say h3 new branch here. Save that. Okay. I'm going to say git checkout -d branch added. Switch to a new branch. And then we verify that we're on the same branch. Branch added. And then now we go back to our GitHub desktop, and we can now see that we have this restored version that's here. That's good. Now we want to go back into the actual code and commit this. First method, index.html. It always helps to spell things properly. Okay. Now we want to git commit branch added. So we see that change. Now we go to Git desktop again, now that we have that new change. We have our history, now we see branch added. And with that, we see that it gives us the option to publish the branch. As of right now, it doesn't give us the option to just push it to the main already, because it recognizes that we're in a different branch. And if you click branch here, you have the options to look at the branch that you're on right now and possibly rename it or delete it. So with that, we're just going to go ahead and publish this branch. Sorry about that. It's a little laggy sometimes. You see this new change right here, new branch. Sorry about that. My internet is not being very good right now. Having just a little bit of issue with that. That's all right. Move on. Git branch. And you see this one's also on the same branch. So we have a couple commits to do here. This was the changes we had before. This is the restored version. And then now we have branch added that is located on a different branch. So you can always check the branch by the actual code right there. You can see that this is a little different right now. So we're on a different branch there. So with that, we're just gonna sorry about that. So we're gonna just publish the branch. For some reason that button wasn't working. Sorry about that. Okay, now we have the branch added. It says last fetch now. We go to our history. We see that the arrow is now gone. Now when we go back into Git on the site, we have now two branches. We have branch added, which was just added right now. And now we're good to go in that regard. And we have our index.html with the new branch. So now that we have created several branches, we want to compile these branches into one site. So with that, we're just going to complete it with a pull request. And with the pull request, this gives you the opportunity for other people to look at your code and make comments on it as well. So now that it's in the pull request stage, the pull request essentially is a spot where other people would review your code before it gets compiled and merged with the main branch. So this is a necessary step when you're working with several other people and you have to review the code before putting it in the production version or the main version. So with that, you can make comments as well. You can say it looks good. make your comment, and then anyone else who's working on your code can see the comments that you made. And then now we'll just complete the merge request, confirm the merge. And now it says the pull request successfully merged and closed. So now that this has been done, we go back to our main branch, which we haven't worked on right here. And then now we see that we have the new branch here. So with that, we have successfully merged our variety of branches, and now we have compiled code. And that completes our demo. So we're just going to go to a quick recap and then finishes off. Okay, so a quick recap of all the commands that we just went through. I know that was a lot. There was a lot of information there. As far as that, we have git add. This adds the file to the staging area. We have git commit. This saves the files that are in the staging area, and then you can use -m to denote your optional message, just to give a little bit more insight on what was going on with that change. We got git push origin main. Main in this case would be the branch name. So this is interchangeable depending on what branch you're on. This pushes your changes to the cloud repository on GitHub. Git pull gets the updates from the most recent cloud repository. Git status shows you the status of your repository. And then git log and git branch just show you the information as needed. And then lastly, we just got git checkout, which allows you to not only switch branches, but with the -b flag, it also allows you to create new branches as well. So with that, we're going to close it with some resources. We have the Git cheat sheet right here. This is the GitHub printed worksheet. This is a very good document. It's only 2 pages, and it's a very comprehensive overlook of all the most commonly used commands that you use with Git. In addition, we also have links to 2 GitHub practices. This Git and GitHub practice link right here is on GitHub itself. And essentially, it's a tutorial that guides you through building a project, a really short project, and then playing around with GitHub so that you get used to the experience of pushing and pulling data, as well as saving and committing and adding your files to the cloud repository. In addition to this, we also have merge conflict practice. Merge conflicts occur when you are overwriting a certain line on a code that someone else has. So for example, if we have 2 people, we have Josh and we have Martin, who are working on 2 different sections of the code, and they both edit the same line on both versions, then we'll have a merge conflict, because when you try to merge them together, GitHub won't know which version to take. Would it be this version or this version? So with that merge conflict, it involves looking at the merge requests and then selecting the appropriate change. And with this is a little bit hard to demonstrate in a singular environment, or if you're doing it by yourself. But fortunately, GitHub created this practice tutorial so that you can simulate a merge conflict with their practice. And at the end of the day, GitHub is a very dense platform. There are literally hundreds of commands that you can use and different ways that you can use them. And a lot of the use of GitHub really depends on how you're writing your code and the style in which you save your material. So with that, practice makes perfect. At the end of the day, you really just have to go into the actual motions of using it to really get a good grip of how to use it in an everyday basis. And with that, that concludes our presentations. If there's any questions, we're just going to stick around for about 15 minutes to answer any of those questions. But if there aren't any questions, if you don't have any questions, you're free to go. That concludes our event. Thank you so much for coming out, and we look forward to seeing you in the next event that we're having. Say on top of our Slack and our chapter page, as well as our DSC UF Instagram page. That's where we'll give all our latest announcements, and that is where you'll find all the information that we're hosting about the events that we're hosting and the club in general. And lastly, if you need any information on the slides, they will be posted on our chapter page. And if you go on our Instagram bio, you will also have a link to those slides there as well. So yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to just speak out or put it in the chat link, and then we'll get into it right now.